This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Mike Sedita.
Hello out there. Welcome to episode 118 of the Good Neighbor Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Sedita. I'm located here in Pasco County, Florida, and I am joined today by our guest, Justin Noe of Justin Noe Real Estate. He is titles. We talked about titles, and there's like so many of them. We just kind of lumped it into jack of all trades. He handles everything that needs to be done with the firm, but he's partnered with his wife, so we all know who's really in charge. Justin, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
So glad to have you on. If you don't know what the Good Neighbor Podcast is, and you're just kind of getting familiar with it, essentially the Good Neighbor Podcast started in 2020 when everybody had to be socially distant. And it was a way for business owners like you and philanthropic groups and charities and people in the community who do business and do good things to be able to get their message out to the community in this format while still being socially distant. And over the past 3+ years, the Good Neighbor Podcast has grown into a national brand. We're all the way from Virginia to Colorado and a bunch of states in between. I'm fortunate enough to be the person here in Tampa that gets to talk to business owners like you. So with that said, tell us a little bit about Justin Noe Real Estate.
Yes. So Justin Noe Real Estate is a company we recently started after a couple years of doing some, other real estate activities, and got my license a couple years back when I was still in the Marine Corps, and, got it turned on down here in Florida. My family and I moved here, and we started helping out, being an agent, trying to figure out my new career. And I've always had a background in investing for myself and some other partners of mine, and we wanted to take that experience and help other investors in this area build their own portfolio, provide our expertise that we've learned over the last decade or so, and build their portfolios and their net worth.
So first and foremost, thank you for your service. We are huge supporters of anybody that does first responder type stuff as well as military. It's a big part of why we get to do what we do every day. So thank you first and foremost for that. Secondarily, you used the term real estate things. So your former real estate things, was that mainly like when you got back and you were trying to figure out your footing, were you trying to do the residential thing and starting to realize, I'm more of the money guy, I'm more of the investor guy, and started to shift a little bit and want to help people in that regard? Or like right out of the gate, did you know, like, hey, I'm not going to truck family of 7 around Tampa to look for a house? That's not going to be my thing.
Yeah, so that was where I was at initially, right? And I actually helped quite a few people, do retail sales. And, I got a knack for doing listings and things of that nature, where we do a video for our clients and, take that video where I'm in front of camera and push it out to an audience and, put an ad spin behind it. So that way we can market it really well and hopefully bring them highest and best, pricing on their property. Somehow I got, I always wanted to work with more investors because that was where I liked my line of focus to be. And I just started attracting investors into my network. And so I started building that out more. And we've gotten to a place now where we want to expand into that and focus a little bit more there. And if a retail client needs some help, we also help them if it meets what we're trying to do.
Okay. So I'm trying to read a little bit between the lines with some of this stuff. It sounds like, again, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm making assumptions here just from our conversation, but there's a dabble of residential listings and buyers if you come across them, but the crux of it, is it like property management or is it more Airbnb type stuff? Is that part of the portfolio where someone says, hey, you know what, Justin, I have, 40 grand to invest as my X% down, whatever that is. I'm making up a number here. I want to kind of spread it around and kind of build up some rental property stuff. And then do you guys help them with that process and then help them manage it? Or is it really just like kind of investing? I forget is it like REITs? What is the terminology that people use? Like where you can just invest in chunks of real estate?
Yeah, that was REIT. So an REIT.
I left out the E. The E.
You're all good. So I don't really dabble in that too much. I'm more of the traditional method. We got our start in buying whole rental properties, and then, my wife and I were acquiring them as we were getting stationed across country. And then when we would move, we would turn them into a rental property. We have since sold off the ones that are out of state of Florida and focused our portfolio down here. We've acquired 18 units over the last few years.
Wow.
And they're mostly, small multifamily, single family homes. We've done a variety of long-term rentals. Then we have one short-term rental. We've got a couple medium-term rentals in our portfolio. So we've dabbled in a little bit of that. Last year, I got into land investing and flipping land. And then this year we did our first home flip based off of our knowledge of buying rental properties, fixing them up, and then renting them out. So we just, we're looking to raise a little bit more capital by doing some flipping. I've also gotten partnered up with another company. It's called Fast Home Buyers of Florida, where we go out direct to seller and try to, help them with their issues and either wholesale the property to a investor list that we have, or we will purchase the property ourselves and do the flip. We haven't gotten to a point where we've made any rentals out of that partnership yet, but there are plans if we find the right property to do that.
Okay, so a couple questions off of what you just said there. Number one, I get short-term rentals. Those are hey, I have a property near a place where people want to come for a week and all that, right? That would be classified short-term. Long-term, obviously, we know people are signing a year lease. What is a medium? Is that like a snowbird that wants just a rental place for 4 months? Is that kind of that category, or is that something totally different?
Yeah, that could be the category, but more, I guess, traditionally it would be, your traveling nurses or people that are coming into an area for, a short amount of time. Currently, our medium-term lease has been rented out for almost a year now. It was supposed to be just, normally 3 to 6 months, but they've been there almost a year because they were working on a golf course here locally, and they were ground shapers and doing all that kind of stuff. So,
okay. So then the next question I have from that is the whole purpose, looking at it from the outside looking in, someone would say, hey, look, I'm going to buy a multifamily property. I'm going to create that rental income. And that's almost like an annuity, right? Like you have it, whatever your nut is, your mortgage is on it every month, your rentals are covering that and the expenses, and it's generating income. And I've seen on the internet, there's all of these spreadsheets and formulations that you can plug in this and plug in that to say, is this viable? Or you need to get it at this price for it to be viable. Is the whole purpose of the straight flip, hey, we just need capital. We're going to invest X, put in Y, sell it for Z. That profit is going to go now into more long-term rental stuff. Is that the whole purpose of doing those short-term flips? Or do you have a bug for that? Because to me, I watch these shows on TV, man, and I tell you, they look great in a 40-minute episode where everything just happens to come together. But behind the scenes, this crap is taking a year, and with production issues over the past 2 years, I can't even imagine what a headache that is, navigating multiple GCs and subs to get a job done. Or do you guys do a lot of it on your own?
So we haven't taken on a massive project outside of the first one that we did, and we hired a GC and it went really bad. And, we learned a ton. We got our doctorate degree in real estate on that one.
Yeah.
And I paid for the price on it too. But the flips that we try to choose are ones that we know we can tackle with the crews that we have in place. So when we were buying rental properties and having to fix them up, they're normally lighter rehabs. Like, hey, we got to change the floors. We want to put a new kitchen in, maybe, get the roof replaced or something along those lines.
Or upgrade the AC or something that's like plug and play.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's a little bit simpler. We are working on a pretty decent sized one now that we did have to get a GC involved for one of the repairs and stuff like that. But we feel more comfortable in that because I've built those relationships over the past 3 to 4 years.
You know what it is? It's the supply chain thing that freaks me out when I watch this stuff, especially what's kind of gone on here since, 2020, right? Stuff slowed down. At first, after 2020, after COVID, you couldn't find people to work. That was the first stumbling block. And then all of a sudden you couldn't get materials, and stuff was 6-8 months out, and jobs that were priced at 50 grand were now 90 grand because all this stuff was going on. But then the other part of that is take a garden variety. Okay. Like you just said, let's say it's garden variety. And you're like, hey, you know what? This house is great. We just need new floors in this bad boy, and we could flip it, and we know we could make X. And then you rip up the floor and there's a sinkhole underneath it. And all of a sudden it turns into Tom Hanks and Shelley Long in The Money Pit. And all of a sudden everything's going that's all those different things. it's scary, right? Like every time you go into it, it's got to be exhilarating and yet a little scary.
Yeah, the life of a real estate investor can definitely have its ups and its downs. And, the home that we just purchased actually has 2 sinkholes on the property, right? Well, unrepaired sinkholes from back in early 2000. So it was a scam that was going on back then, and it's not really that big of a deal, but we have a company that we built a relationship with, and they can get those done for us relatively affordably. And so it's not scary anymore, but it was scary up front. We had some challenges getting insurance in place. So luckily our GC was able to help us out, figure something out with that. So that way we could actually close on the property and then begin, the rehabs. But there's always something that was unplanned. And that's why we underwrite our deals in a way to ensure that, like, hey, if something pops up, we've got money in the budget to handle it.
Right. It's funny, and I'm going to guess, I could be wrong. Is that property in Land O'Lakes by any chance?
It's actually in Newport Richie in the downtown area.
Because the funny part is, I'll tell you, when I was moving, when I had to relocate to Florida, my parents were sick, and I was coming to Tampa, and I'm looking on Zillow and all these sites to just see what the market looks like. And I kept saying, man, all these houses in Land O'Lakes are nice, and they're all a little bit cheaper and whatever it was. And then I'm watching TV, and there was this show when I was a kid. It was Leonard Nimoy. It was called In Search Of. It was like this show that was on when I was a kid. I'm probably a little bit older than you. But then they remade it with the guy who played Spock in the new Star Trek movies. And the episode I tune into is Land O'Lakes, Florida, the sinkhole capital of the world. And I'm like, it freaked me out to the point where I'm like, no more looking in Land O'Lakes. We're not going to look anywhere in Land O'Lakes. So how do you mitigate a property with 2 active unresolved sinkholes? Is it just moving earth? How do you do that?
Yeah, so they have a process. Well, like I said, it was a scam, and it was done by, they say it's a scam, but it was, long story short, they go and they underpin the property. So that way, if the sinkhole ever did materialize and you're in the ground underneath you just fell through, well, the home would still be standing and there would just be a hole around it. So that's essentially the way that they mitigate ever having a problem with the sinkhole.
Wow. And I would think, as you referenced a little bit, insurance already in the state of Florida is like the bane of everybody's existence because the rates are going up. I see on Facebook probably 4 times a day in some group, hey, does anybody know an insurance agent because my rate just doubled, etc. I would think getting that property insured properly to close and clear title and all that stuff, there's a lot of work that goes into it, right?
Absolutely. And, we've got a great a couple different agents that we use, but specifically on this one was Killingsworth Insurance Agency, their local agency here in the area. And they really helped us find the policy that fit our needs. Now it's a temporary policy and we've got to get it remediated. And then we've got to go back and get a standard type insurance policy.
But it helps you to close. It helps you to do the work.
Absolutely.
It's almost like a bridge. It's almost like a bridge insurance in a way.
Yeah, I think it's about a 6-month policy, and it's you pay the premium, you don't get anything back. So if we sell the property in 3 months, that premium's gone.
You're paying it.
Yep.
So let me ask you, you're located up in Brooksville, right? Up in that area.
Yes, that's where I live, and our office is located.
From an investment standpoint, I would think it wouldn't matter if it was Spring Hill to St. Pete or West Shore to Wesley Chapel. If the property fits the parameters that you guys are searching for, you'll go anywhere.
Absolutely. Yes. We market all the way down into Hillsborough County, all the way up to Marion County.
Okay.
And then everywhere in between.
Okay. So currently, couple of logistic questions. Currently, how many properties is Noe Real Estate managing actively?
So I'm partnered with, a few different people, including family members, and then another Marine officer friend of mine. And we have 18 under management, and we do management in-house. Normally somebody on our team will, do the groundwork. Like my brother does a lot of our maintenance calls and things of that nature. He already runs a small business, and it, kind of makes sense. And so, and then we have a partner with somebody out in Daytona, South Daytona, and they are the ones that are managing that property.
Okay, so you're across the state, so you have where if it's a little too far away, you have pieces in place to be able to handle whatever comes up from underneath.
Yeah, that one was a unique deal that we put together because I met this guy over a Zoom call. to talk about different stuff. Then we ended up talking about real estate, and we're like, hey, we should meet up for lunch. We met halfway in Leesburg, Florida, had great lunch, had great conversation. Sunday, that same weekend, he sends me a deal and he's like, man, we should buy this. And we were under contract by Monday morning. So it was a very fast-paced deal that we did specifically with them because of the type of people they were and how, we just, vibed really well, and we trusted them and they trusted us.
So we already talked a little bit about your journey and your background and some of that stuff. So I want to kind of slide over to ask you, because here's one of my myths or misconceptions, and maybe you have another one, but I always thought traditionally, like, you put using generic real estate, you put 20% down on your home, and that helps you to get your conventional mortgage, and you don't need mortgage insurance and all that, those different metrics, right? But I always thought with an investment property, you needed an exorbitant amount of down payment capital to be able to get into that property. Is that an accurate statement, or is that just a misconception? Like now I see on the internet is the best and the worst of whatever, but like buy a 18 unit property with 5% down, and is all that real, or is that just people like clickbaiting to try to get people into their program? Is that stuff that can be done or not?
That sounds like a clickbait thing there, but I will say that you can get into real estate with no and low money down. And, there is the traditional method I've done where I've had nothing up front to buy the house. And then I've also put 20% down and, some money on the back end to do a little bit of repairs. What we try to do a lot of the times is go out and raise private capital to purchase the deal cash. 2 reasons: you can get a better deal, and then you don't have to worry about banks and then the deal falling through at the end. So you're giving security to the seller, and you're making it a little bit easier on your end, and you're going to get a better deal normally because of that. And so we raise the private capital. Sometimes we put our own capital in. We'll go out to private money lenders and, bring in their capital to purchase it, rehab it. And then we normally put it into place. When we're doing it for a rental property, let's just say, we're going to get it into place. We're going to get it rented out to a qualified tenant, and we've got our processes in place. And, and at about 6-month mark, we try to shoot for 6 months. Sometimes you have to go up to a year to let the property be seasoned. And that's that's a lender's term that they're looking for. So you season the property, then you go to a lender and you get a traditional mortgage on the property. We've done that a few different times. It's the method that we prefer. It's called BRRRR, which is buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. It's a popular thing in the investing world. If you Google that, you're going to find all kinds of information on it. So
let me ask you, you touched on it a minute ago, and you said, look, we try to go to these sellers and help them with their situation. And if you're not watching this, I'm making air quotes. Okay. Are there a lot of situations like the market has been so crazy here? Like everybody's freaked out because the market came down from where it was in 2021, 22, and houses were ridiculous and all that stuff. But there's a lot of people with a lot of equity in their homes. Is it hard? Is it like a diamond in the rough to find somebody who's still possibly upside down? Or is it generally people who are like lost their job? I'm trying to think of what the scenario that occurs when that quote unquote situation makes it ideal for you to step in, where they would go, yeah, you know what, we want to do this, or rather than just sell it and take the equity. What is that transaction like? Like, how does that happen?
Yeah, I wish there was like a cookie cutter box of how it works. But it's a variety of different situations. Specifically for that deal we've got going on down in Newport Richey, it's a single family home and a duplex on the same parcel of land. Right. Okay. And it has the sinkhole issue. It had an older roof. It's got an older HVAC. They're outdated, a lot of different variables. The owner didn't have the money to go in and make all those repairs and, do everything, but he had equity in the home because he bought it back in 2005. Right. So, he's got equity there, and he's willing to take a hit on all the equity he could get out of it because he knows he doesn't want to deal with having to make those repairs. He wants somebody else to come in and just, do everything for him. But, and that's what we did. We offered him a price that he gave us a price, and then we offered him a price that we were comfortable with and that he was comfortable with, and negotiated and closed the deal. And now we're working to, get the equity back out of the project.
That's great. Like, yeah, that's kind of the scenario I'm thinking. Like someone has a bunch of, like, we're using round numbers. Like I have 150 grand in equity. I'll take 120 grand in equity just not to deal with the headache of the roof and the this and the that, because I would have eaten up that equity anyway to put a roof and an AC unit or whatever, right? So like that's kind of that's kind of the thought process. And do you have one of these like proprietary calculators that you guys use to say houses market value is estimated at X, we can buy it at Y, and these are the repair variable? Like, do you have something that you can put that in, or are you doing that off the cuff? I mean, how do you do that?
Yeah, so we do have access to tools that we can use. Bigger Pockets, which is like a real estate investing platform, they have tools on there that I've used in the past. But a lot of the times you're on the ground meeting with these people and you're trying to come up with like a deal right then. So you've already done some research in the area. You kind of have an idea of what a house that's fixed up can sell for in a certain neighborhood or certain street even sometimes. And so you kind of go in with a little bit of knowledge, but you don't know what the house is. Like, you don't know that, the pipes are leaking on the inside.
What you're getting, right.
Yeah, what you're going to get into. So you start walking in and I have like a general knowledge on normally what things cost. And then I take that general knowledge and I usually add a couple thousand to it because sometimes I underbid things, I've noticed. And then we had to eat it on the back end. So I go in and we point out everything and ask them, hey, do you guys know if anything that's wrong? And they point them out. And, sometimes they've done research on what it does cost to get repaired. Right. So they're like, hey, I have this quote to get this repaired, so I can take that off the price. So sometimes you let them negotiate for you, which is
let them do it. Hang their own rope with their noose. So are you guys do you have MLS? Like, are you going into MLS and doing some comps before you go into a property? Is that kind of the research ahead of time?
Absolutely. Yes. I'm a licensed agent in the area. And so I have access to the MLS. So I go in there and try to pull as much data as that, we can find publicly. And you can find stuff also on Zillow. Like, if you don't have access to the MLS, it's good for sales data. There's a lot of things about Zillow that I don't like, but there are a lot of things I do. And getting accurate sales data can be one of those things. And then you can cross-reference it against a county website, like to see if that sale actually took place and at what price and everything else.
And then, we've talked, this is a lot of granular stuff. So people who are listening to this are like interested in real estate. Let's step aside from that. What do you and your wife do for fun? You guys have kids? Are they involved in stuff? Are you guys involved with stuff? You're a military guy. Do you like to just shoot stuff on the weekends? Like, what do you do for enjoyment?
Yeah, absolutely. My wife is from Sweden, and we have 4 daughters. And we recently took a month-long. Yeah, I know. And we have a female golden retriever, so only blonde females in my household, right?
Good luck, man. What are the ages? I got to know the ages.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, 11-year-old, and a 6-year-old.
Yeah, listen. You're gonna need some guns. First of all, you're gonna definitely need to have some of that in the house. And definitely probably some Xanax at some point with 4 teenage girls. At one point, there's going to be that window. And when I see you, there'll be a lot more gray hair in that beard. I can tell you right now. It's already coming in. I can see it. There's 2 teenagers. It's gonna like a gremlin. It's gonna put it in water and it's gonna replicate.
We're super blessed. They're actually really good kids. I don't know how it happened. I'm shocked.
Know how it happened.
I don't know how it happened. Probably mostly because of my wife. She's a great mom. And she takes care of them. And, she's actually out with them right now doing some stuff. So, but they're awesome. I like to hunt as well. So I do like to shoot things.
Okay.
I actually harvested a deer, a few weeks back up in our property. We have some hunting land up in Georgia. So that was pretty awesome. What else? We like to travel, right? We haven't done as much lately because when you're growing a small business, right, you're kind of, tailored into making sure you grow that out. But, we did get to go to Sweden this summer and visit her family. And it's a beautiful place and really enjoyed it. And so, that's kind of where we're at right now.
So tell me, listen, you have a great background. Has there been a point in your life where you've run into a hardship or an obstacle, whether it's professionally, personally, that you said, shoot, I don't know how I'm going to make it through this? And what did you do? So like other business owners who might hear this, if it's on a professional side, can say, I'm going through something similar. This is how Justin got around it. Or on a personal note, like something that's occurred where you've been able to push through, come out the other side and be where you're at today.
Yeah, I've got a couple things. One is, just being a Marine in general. I grew up in a small town, joined the Marine Corps right out of high school. And then, that's just a challenging thing to do and go away from your family and, really never been out of the state of Florida too much. And so doing that was a huge challenge. And then I, pushed myself further to, take on different MOSs and different MOS training. Then I became an officer. So I went through officer training, and that was like a big leap from being like a, enlisted guy to then going into like in this officer program that I went to, and dealing with that. It was a different world, if you will. They call it the dark side for a reason. If you've ever talked to a military officer, they call it the dark side.
Just for like political stuff, or that the guys that you were enlisted with look at you differently and you're kind of now the enemy a little bit internally.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I have really a lot of great friends, and most of my friends that I maintained were enlisted guys, and we still talk to this day. I think it's more of like in a political spectrum, right? Because now in the officer world, it's you're expected to be a lady or a gentleman, right? So you've got to be a little bit more polished, and you've got to be willing to do things outside of the normal hours and everything else, because you're a leader. You're a leader as an enlisted guy too, right? So I don't want to take that away.
Right.
You're looked at, on a different leadership level as an officer. So they put like, extra requirements on you and things of that nature.
So, and just the challenge of the logistics of taking on this extra spotlight, that's kind of the biggest challenge to overcome.
Yeah, I would say that, people are looking to you from, above and below now to like, evaluate you on how you're doing. So you've got to walk that fine line. And I was a chief warrant officer, which is you can only get to that officer program as an enlisted man. And then you become like an expert in your field. And, now you're like, man, I'm supposed to be an expert. Like, there's all these things that are going on. Like, I didn't even know.
Everybody's looking at me. Everybody's looking at me. Yeah.
So, and then the other one I wanted to mention real quick was in real estate. And it was our second deal. Like, this could have like probably, broken up relationships and, things gotten really bad. We bought this property in about 4 years ago in October of 2019, right? Now just think about that. It needed a major rehab. So we hired a general contractor, and then we came to visit to see how things were going in like February of 2020. So we started hearing about COVID, right, leading up to that. And then obviously COVID happens, their crews quit, we're having issues with the city, all of these things were happening at the same time. We had about $100,000 into the deal that we ended up, we had a couple $100,000 into the deal, but we ended up going ahead and dumping that property. We didn't have any more money left to finish off the project. And we were told it was going to take about $70,000. Well, $100,000 later, we're still in the project and it's only halfway done. So
yeah, it's scary.
And we had to find an investor to come in and buy that project from us. And we took a loss on it, and we learned a lot. But the good thing is my business partner, who's still my business partner today, we're still friends. We still meet regularly. We still get on calls together. And, that made us stronger. And we went from that to then doing 4 deals in 2021 together. And then, we've subsequently done more since then.
All right. So here's my question about that. Okay. I mean, you've been married to your wife a long time. You probably don't have this happen, but like you're it's kind of like you're dating that house, like you're dating a woman, and you break up. They had to dump that deal. Do you go back and look to see what that house has sold for since and say, oh man, like you're like searching, like doing the old ex-girlfriend look through social media? Are you going through Zillow and being like, man, if I could have just held on to that one a little bit longer? Or was it like, did it end up being a dud and a loser? Or is it kind of the one that got away?
So it's pretty funny that it's like 5 houses down from where our office is at now on Main Street.
Oh my God. That's
so
crazy. You drive past it. It's a constant. You're driving past your ex-girlfriend's house every day.
Hey, and it's that ex-girlfriend that you're so glad that you parted ways with, that you didn't care how good the next people did on it. It's right across the street from a title office that, and I'm just happy that they finally got it done and they got it sold. Now, it took them like 3 more years. It just sold like
only
last
3
year. Yeah, only 3. And we had it for a year and some change. So we were, I look at that and I'm like, I'm just so glad I
dodged a bullet. Yeah. There's definitely quite a few of those, but that's a topic for a totally different podcast. We could do that another time. Yeah. So tell us the one thing, people listening to this, if you're like, who's your person? Like, for example, if you were in a networking group, I'm not saying any networking group names, but if you happen to be in a networking group, who are you looking for?
So Bigger Pockets, which is that, online, they do podcasting. They got a ton of resources. They're folks that I'm looking for, but More specifically, I recently joined a real estate mastermind that's evolved around veterans, and it's nationwide. It's called the War Room. And, I've just gotten into that recently, but I met them recently at a conference, and it's just like you could instantly feel like the brotherhood, the sisterhood in there, and the people that are doing
common.
A lot of common background and, no excuse mentality. And so they're kind of hold you accountable to, to yourself. And then, my business partner, Zach Booth, he's one of the business partners that I've come in with. He does a lot of great different things in his market and what we're doing down here in Florida with some of his processes. So, a couple different folks out there that I look to for guidance and mentorship. And those are just a few.
So what's the one thing people listening to this, like your ideal customer, who are they and what do they need to know about you guys that would make them use you to do business with?
Yeah. So we, are looking for sellers who are in a bind, right? That, don't want to put it on the MLS and, want an easier, smoother transaction. So that would be, folks that we're looking for to acquire properties. But we're also looking for investors that are looking for a project, right? Like if you're first time or a few times in and you're looking for somebody with experience and a network to help you find a project, we're looking for those types of individuals as well.
And what's the best way to get a hold of you? If I'm sitting here listening to this and I'm like, man, I want to invest with this guy. I want to sell him my property. What's the best way for us to get a hold of you?
Absolutely. So you can reach out to me personally on my business line at 352-585-5673. We've got a website. It's pretty simple. It's my name and real estate at the end, Justin Noe Real Estate.com. I'm on Instagram and Facebook with that same handle, Justin Noe Real Estate. So you can check us out there. We also have a YouTube channel, Justin Noe Real Estate, where we've gone out to local businesses and, kind of highlighted them and, showed you some of the things that you could do here in the Nature Coast. So we've done some of that work too. So yeah, that's some of the ways that you can get in touch with us.
So folks, if you're listening to this, it's Justin Noe Real Estate. It's N-O-E Real Estate. Okay. We're going to put all the tags and socials and all that stuff in the podcast. But if you're interested in finding out more, the best way to get a hold of Justin straight out of the gate, 352-585-5673. Justin, thank you for being a good neighbor. Thank you for being on the Good Neighbor podcast. You have a great day, my friend.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast Passcode. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnppasscode.com. That's gnppasscode.com or call 813-922-3610.